WALK members, alumni, professors, prospective students, and fellow members of the law school and legal community, good evening and welcome to the Women of Color Collective annual alumni reception. My name is Camille Peral, and alongside Jency Paz, I serve as executive co-chair of NYU Law's Women of Color Collective, also known as WALK. WALK is my home here at NYU Law. Here, women, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people of color are supported. We are vastly underrepresented in the legal profession, and law school can feel incredibly isolating. And in an effort to bring these students together, WALK provides a space for us to connect and support each other through not only the trials of law school, but also the difficulties in our day-to-day lives. In 2022, as we continue to face unprecedented challenges and live through historic events, WALK, now in its 15th year on campus, has remained a steady, open, and uplifting community here at NYU Law. We hosted our annual panels on 1L summer internships, women in specialized groups, and of course, litigation and corporate law. We expanded our executive board to include more 1L and LLM representatives to ensure that our efforts reach as many students as possible. And now, our community service co-chairs are hard at work to put on our annual Mixed Walk fundraiser. This year's theme for our alumni reception is Building Bridges, Reimagining Community. This last year was filled with cautious hope, fear, and constant change. As our community began to take steps to ensure our health and safety, violence against Asian Americans right here in New York City once again emphasized the need for safe spaces like WALK to exist. Each year, we honor a woman of color alumna who embodies our theme through their work. And this year, we are thrilled to honor Sion Gurmu, class of 2015. But before we hear from Sion, I'm excited to invite another strong supporter of the Women of Color Collective to speak. Dean Trevor Morrison, the Dean of the Law School, has supported WALK's mission from the very beginning. WALK is thankful to you, Dean Morrison, for your never-ending enthusiasm for and encouragement of the advancement of our careers and development. And without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Dean Trevor Morrison.
Hello, it's my pleasure to welcome you all virtually to NYU Law for this year's Women of Color Collective alumni reception. This is really one of the special alumni events that we have every year at the law school, and we're very glad that you could join us this year. Although we had hoped to convene this event in person, it is still really a special opportunity for our community to gather and to celebrate distinguished graduates of the law school. We're also really pleased that today we can be having joined with us at this event some of our admitted students. Thank you for joining us for this event this evening. And we very much hope to be welcoming you here at the law school as students in the fall. This year, we are thrilled to honor Sion Gurmu, class of 2015, who's now the legal director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration and the founder and director of the Queer Black Immigrant Project. Sion will be formally introduced and awarded the Woman of Distinction Award in just a moment. But on behalf of the law school, I'd like to take this opportunity to express how endlessly proud we are, Sion, of you and your work, and to thank you for the tremendous example that you set for our students in all that you do. WALK is a vital organization to the NYU Law community overall. It encourages collaboration and conversation between and among women of color within the NYU Law community and in the legal profession more broadly. And this annual celebration continues to be a terrific way to mark the impact of WALK as an organization and the impact of our women law graduates, our women of color law graduates in particular. So thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you once again to our honoree for joining us. And I'd like to turn things over now to Jency Paz, class of 2023, who will present the Women of Distinction Award.
Good evening, and thank you to Dean Morrison for those kind words and remarks. My name is Jancy Paz, and I serve as executive co-chair of WALK alongside Camille. This year, as we debated what our theme should be, we reflected on the ways WALK has changed throughout its existence and even within our own time at NYU. WALK was founded from a desire to create space for women of color to connect with and support each other in the face of underrepresentation. Our mission and collective has grown since then. Today, WALK provides community for women and gender nonconforming and non-binary people of color, and our efforts ensure those most marginalized both within and outside the law school. We know our liberation is tied to the liberation of our peers, colleagues, neighbors, and community members, and have consequently sought ways to increase collaborations with all the affinity groups, as well as redistribute our institutional wealth. Thus, this year, our theme is Building Bridges, Reimagining Community. No one embraces our theme better than Sian Vermou, class of 2015, legal director of Black Alliance for Just Immigration, commonly known as BAJI, and founder and director of the Queer Black Immigration Project. In 2019, Sian was awarded the Outlaw Alum of the Year award. In her remarks, she said, "In order to dismantle the multi-layered systems of oppression faced by our communities, it is imperative to work intersectionally and to invest in movements that raise the voices and demands of the most marginalized. We have an extraordinary opportunity to bend the legal profession closer to justice." Sian's constant advocacy for Black queer migrants is radical, although it shouldn't be. In immigration spaces and narratives, we constantly see the erasure of Black people, leading to public ignorance of the ways in which Black immigrants are doubly targeted and punished by our criminal and immigration systems. Sian's past and current work reminds us that there's always more work to be done in reimagining and creating a future where we're all free. It is with great honor that I introduce our 2022 WALK Women of Distinction Award recipient, Sian Vermou.
Thank you, Jancy, for that lovely introduction. First, I would like to say that I am so pleased to be here in the company of such bright and powerful women of color and the people who support us. I want to give a big, warm virtual welcome to all of the folks in attendance today, and I'm eager for the day when we can hold physical space for one another again. Next, I would like to thank the women of WALK and the NYU Law community for this incredible honor. The legal profession was built on exclusivity. It was never intended to be an inclusive space. So I'm always in awe of the women of color who built new systems and structures that help create inclusivity in the law. That is the critical work that's being done by groups like the Women of Color Collective, which looks at women of color individually and works to combat barriers to entering the legal profession, fostering a network of support, and promoting wellness amongst our community. I can speak to that because I'm a product of it. You are all doing incredible work to address the issue of intersectionality and combat legal cultures where our efforts and contributions are neither sufficiently recognized nor rewarded. So I commend you and support you in all of your tireless work. I also want to acknowledge the complexity of receiving this honor at a time when I'm sitting with a great deal of grief and gratitude. Grief because there are countless global conflicts we wake up to and are forced to monitor each day, including ongoing armed conflict in my own home country of Ethiopia. I also grieve because the Black immigrant communities I advocate on behalf of are being disproportionately subjected to unjust deportations while seeking safety in the US. And this administration continues to create and support policies intended to deter and push back Black migrants, preventing them from even touching US soil through a system of racialized border exclusion. And the greatest grief lies within my own family as we are mourning the greatest loss we have ever experienced. So I wrestled deeply with how I wanted to enter this space today and the remarks I wanted to share with this group that I hold in such high esteem. Fortunately, my family and my lived experiences has taught me that there is no refuge in silence, and the path to liberation requires our collective voices. And this is how I came to gratitude. I feel immense gratitude because of the incredible movement lawyering and cross-racial organizing growing out of NYU Law, and the enduring inspiration that groups like WALK provide when it comes to multiracial solidarity. I am so proud to be in community with such a strong collective of women, and I'm grateful to be part of a growing legacy of solidarity. So despite the challenges of this particular moment, I am incredibly grateful to have this opportunity to be in reflection and community with one another. With that in mind, I would like to speak to you today about what my legal education has meant for me in terms of the trajectory of my life, but also in terms of my imagination of struggle and liberation. My desire to attend law school stemmed in large part from my family's experiences in our home country of Ethiopia, as well as our experiences navigating the incredibly complex US immigration system. In many ways, my work is a continuation of the rich history of organizing that is consistent with the Black radical tradition of resistance that has been carried on by generations of Black activists in Africa, the US, and especially those in my own family. So as a foreign-born Black activist and an immigrant rights lawyer, my practice nurtures and claims my own power in the immigrant communities I was brought up in and now serve. I am constantly channeling my individual expertise and power into my practice, where my primary tenet is that migration is a human right. In my work, I strive to center the humanity and dignity of all immigrants, and especially Black immigrants, who, like myself, have all too often been devalued by systemic racism. My desire to attend law school also stemmed from my work as an educator in the Liberty City community of Miami, Florida, where I helped my students organize public protests after the killing of Trayvon Martin. As Black kids growing up in America, my students keenly understood that the problems went much deeper than the lynching of a young man their age from their community. Beyond the issue of racist violence, they began to grapple with how combating the kinds of everyday repression meted out by white perpetrators and the police was integral to how they experienced their neighborhood and the criminalization of Black people, people of color, and poor people more generally. I did not realize at that time that we were organizing some of the first local responses that would form the largest civil rights movement of our time, the Black Lives Matter movement. I also did not imagine that I would go on to work alongside Opal Tometi, one of the 3 Black women who founded the Black Lives Matter movement at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Together at the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, also known as BAJI, we work to ensure that the larger movement addressed the needs of communities who experience violence with special attention to state-sanctioned violence, as well as the needs of Black immigrants, like my own family, who fled armed conflict in their home countries only to be met with new challenges in the US, including widespread anti-Blackness and a racist immigration system. When I joined BAJI, we were a sort of ragtag group of Black immigrant lawyers, community organizers, and directly affected people advocating to abolish ICE and the idea that we need to detain immigrants. Even now, in my role as the first legal director of BAJI, we are constantly striving to highlight the international dimension of the abolitionist movement while working to free Black migrants from cages in Mexico and the US. Similarly, in my role as the founder and director of the Queer Black Immigrant Project, we are constantly working to eliminate tools of social control like detention and surveillance, which undermine and target marginalized communities. In contrast to liberal legalist practice, both Baji and QBIP are Black radical lawyering initiatives that rest on the assumption that no fundamental social change can come about solely through legal reform. Rather, only organized, politicized Black mass activism from below, aimed at transformative justice, can achieve and maintain real social change. In both spaces, we seek to reconceptualize what it means to be an attorney by radicalizing lawyering and engaging in meaningful abolitionist work. For me as a young lawyer, it felt incredibly new and daring to organize in the context of being a Black immigrant and simultaneously finding belonging through politics while challenging establishment-oriented immigrant rights organizations. What was really remarkable about my experience as a budding lawyer was that I had the opportunity to work with organizations that connect personal, local, and global struggles to demand dignity and speak truth to power through movement lawyering, advocacy, and political organizing. And my comrades in the work were also Black immigrants who understood the binding strength of intersectional identity as it applies to building movements that transform societies by destigmatizing our bodies that are marginalized by sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, anti-Blackness, and other forms of identity-based hatred. This was important to me because my work is rooted in the core belief that people living closest to the issues really have the solutions to ignite change. And as a larger community, we should follow the lead of those at the forefront for racial justice and provide investments to support and sustain their work. My experiences as a lawyer, as well as my stellar, and let me repeat that, stellar education at NYU Law, and specifically the Immigrant Rights Clinic, really taught me the meaning of movement lawyering by putting me in a position to take instruction from directly impacted communities and community organizers, as opposed to imposing my leadership or expertise as a legal advocate. These experiences also ingrained in me the importance of building the power of the people as opposed to the power of the law to dismantle systems of oppression in our country. My practice as a lawyer working with organizers required a different ethos and continues to require a different ethos and sometimes different skills than traditional lawyering. These experiences taught me to avoid the flat sort of migration to liberation narratives in which migrants flee an oppressive, homophobic, terrible country of origin to seek refuge in what is characterized as a liberated, tolerant, inclusive Western society. Because these sort of normative narratives ignore the discrimination present in Western countries and uphold a binary dichotomy that pits civilized against uncivilized nations and promotes a progressive US agenda while simultaneously reprimanding our countries of origin for their supposed backwards politics. These sort of normative tropes are unrealistic, as many immigrants, and especially Black immigrants seeking refuge in the US, continue to face similar circumstances they fled in their home country, as well as new challenges, including systemic racism, barriers to the job market, difficulties finding housing, and a racialized immigration system that dehumanizes those seeking a better life in this country. In this way, I learned that the struggle for immigration justice cannot exist in a silo. There is almost no social, racial, class, or economic issue that does not intersect with immigration. So as an attorney committed to social justice, I cannot look at these vital civil rights struggles as separate fights. Rather, we must see them as intertwined paths to justice. The threats and disparities facing our communities are very real. And despite the heavy weight on our shoulders, I'm so proud to see that women of color are blazing new trails and building bridges to create new opportunities for our communities. It is through the leadership of women of color that we can see points of resilience and hope. Most notably, a Black woman with a public interest background has been nominated to become a US Supreme Court Justice after generations of a bench that has been oversaturated with white former corporate attorneys and prosecutors. This is particularly meaningful considering the history of this country has kept us from this coveted role on the highest court in the land, as well as many other roles, solely on the basis of racial and gender discrimination. Moreover, it gives us hope that the court's long history of decisions rooted in interwoven racism and misogyny, particularly targeting Black women, may be subject to change. And in this way, this is an important step in addressing the long-standing and consequential effects of systemic racism. However, many of us have learned by now that regardless of how successful representation might appear, representation alone is never enough. And figureheads of democracy, as it has been written, will continue to be just that, figureheads, unless the tools of democracy also belong to the people furthest from the power structure. I have great hope that this community of women will be the innovators who will create and share these tools, including new organizations and strategies that can actually deliver on the demands that groups like Baji and the Queer Black Immigrant Project have been making. I already see this happening with many women of color who are laying the groundwork and conditions for women, girls, and gender expansive individuals to thrive at all times. I see this in the women in my family who have the resilience and fortitude and beauty to carry our family forward each day despite all of the obstacles that have been thrown our way. I see this in my mentor, Alina Das, an author and brilliant clinical law professor at the helm of a leading institution in the struggle for immigrant rights, who shapes young legal minds each day, including my own. I also see this in my colleagues like Rebecca Alamayo and Nia Tamara, who are among a small community of Black immigration attorneys who are fearlessly advocating on behalf of our communities. These women of color, along with all of you here today, give me hope for our collective futures. As Angela Davis has noted, hope is a discipline. It has to be generated and reproduced. As women of color, we know what exists now is not what we want, and we are still building the world that we want to exist in. So I look forward to working alongside you to fulfill the hope of this moment by building bridges and reimagining a new legacy for generations of women of color that allows space for our full voices and visions for the future. Thank you, and thank you very much for this beautiful award.
Wow, thank you so much, Sion, for sharing your story and words of wisdom. We will hold your words close to our hearts and let it inspire our choices and paths here in the legal profession. To close out, I'd like to extend a big thank you on behalf of NYU Law's Women of Color Collective to Sion Gurmu for joining us this evening. It has been an honor to hear from such an incredible, distinguished, and absolutely inspiring NYU Law alumna, particularly one who has dedicated her career to social justice and advocating for just immigration. Thank you for sharing with us a piece of your heart and your daring story today. I'm sure WAC members here tonight will remember your words for years to come as you continue to build bridges, uplift each other, and challenge the normative tropes that hurt our communities. We would also like to thank the Office of Alumni Relations and the Birnbaum Women's Leadership Network, especially Kelly Spencer for organizing this event. Kelly, we could not have done this without your guidance, patience, and support. Thank you so much. And thank you also to the WAC board, who have all worked so hard to continue to build a supportive space for women, gender nonconforming, and non-binary students of color here at the law school. We are also grateful to our platinum sponsor firms, Cadwalader, Wickersham and Taft, Cooley, Jones Day, Kirkland and Ellis, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton and Garrison, Sidley Austin, Troutman Pepper, and Wilmer Hale. Our sponsor firms play a huge role in allowing WALK to put on robust programming for our members year after year, so thank you to them. And finally, thank you to our attendees for tuning in tonight. It is unfortunate that we can't yet all be together to celebrate Sion and WALK over some finger foods and wine, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to gather again soon and share in this powerful energy. We appreciate you all taking the time to log on tonight, and we are so happy to see current WALK students, women of color alumni, prospective students, and other members of the law school and legal community present here tonight. Thank you all again. We hope you all had a great time, have a great night, and a wonderful week. Bye.